Hey guys, tonight we are not building giant pyramids or sailing the Nile with pharaohs. No, tonight you are stepping right into the world of ancient Egypt, specifically into the peculiar social scene of its elite, perhaps attending a gathering or a banquet sometime during the New Kingdom, maybe around 1400 BCE. Forget the dusty sandals and simple tunics you might imagine. You're in a room with richly dressed men and women, adorned with jewelry, makeup, and elaborate headdresses. But often, what looks like elaborate braided or styled hair is not their natural hair at all. It's a wig. And these weren't just simple cover ups or fashion accessories like modern wigs. They were statements of status, fashion, hygiene, and protection, absolutely essential to presenting the correct image, especially important when attending a party. There was a whole set of unspoken rules, a peculiar etiquette surrounding these hairpieces, that tells us a lot about Egyptian society. You probably won't survive this dive into ancient Egyptian style without feeling slightly itchy at the thought of wool wigs in the heat, or perhaps questioning your own modern hair care routine and whether shaving your head is truly the most hygienic option. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in the comments below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You see depictions of ancient Egyptians everywhere, on tomb walls, in statues, on sarcophagi. They often have these perfectly styled, elaborate hairdos that look almost too neat to be real. And often they weren't. For the elite of ancient Egypt, both men and women, wigs were a ubiquitous and vital part of their appearance. They were worn daily by many, and especially for important occasions like ceremonies, official duties, and social gatherings. Yes, parties. But why did they go to all this trouble? Why shave off their natural hair? Or keep it very short, only to cover their heads with an elaborate hairpiece? It might seem counterintuitive, especially in the hot Egyptian climate, but there were several practical, social, and symbolic reasons behind the widespread use of wigs. It wasn't just about looking good, it was about cleanliness, comfort, and status. One of the primary practical reasons was hygiene. In the hot, dusty climate of Egypt, keeping natural hair clean and free from lice, fleas, and other parasites was a constant challenge. Shaving the head completely, or keeping the hair very short, was the most effective way to deal with this problem. It allowed for easier washing of the scalp. However, a shaved head needs protection, both from the sun and for appearance's sake. This is where wigs came in. They provided a clean, controllable head covering. Think of it as a highly effective, ancient form of pest control and climate control. Sensory details imagine the feel of a smoothly shaved scalp, the imagined discomfort of an itchy head from lice or dust, the feel of clean air on the scalp. Joke number 1. Forget bad hair day. Ancient Egyptians worried about bad parasite week. Shaving seemed simpler. Shaving the head also helped with sun protection. The Egyptian sun is intense. A bare scalp is vulnerable to sunburn and heat stroke. Wigs provided a layer of insulation and shade, protecting the head from the direct glare and heat of the sun, offering a measure of comfort when outdoors. Beyond these practical aspects, wigs were powerful symbols of status and fashion. Making a wig, especially a large, elaborate one from human hair, was a skilled and time-consuming process, making them expensive accessories. The size, material, quality of craftsmanship, and style of a wig could immediately signal a person's wealth, social rank, and importance. Large, complex wigs were typically worn by the wealthiest and most elite members of society. Different styles went in and out of fashion over the centuries, just like hairstyles today. Owning a collection of varied and fashionable wigs was a clear display of wealth and taste. Imagine the ancient Egyptian equivalent of showing off your designer handbag, but it's your latest elaborate hairpiece made from imported hair. Sensory details the visual of different wig styles: short bobs, long braids, elaborate curls. The feel of a heavy, Dense wig. Wigs were also essential for ceremony and formal appearance. While some people might have worn simpler wigs or even their own natural hair if clean and well maintained in informal daily life, though even then, short hair or a simple cap was common for official duties, religious ceremonies, appearing before superiors, and attending social gatherings like parties. Wearing a wig was often mandatory or expected etiquette. It was part of presenting a polished, respectable, and formal image. Contrasting with the more casual look of natural hair, finally, wigs allowed Egyptians to present an idealized, unchanging appearance. Egyptian art often depicts people with a timeless, perfect look. Wigs, being separate from natural hair that grows, grays, or is affected by daily wear and tear, allowed for a consistently styled, idealized appearance that could be maintained regardless of the person's age or the state of their natural hair or scalp. This control over appearance aligned with the Egyptian desire for order and perfection, reflected in their art and religious beliefs. Ancient Egyptians, particularly among the elite classes, commonly wore wigs made from materials such as human hair, sheep wool, or plant fibers for a combination of practical reasons including hygiene, often shaving their heads to prevent lice and ease cleaning, sun protection, and significantly, as powerful symbols of status, wealth, fashion, and for presenting a required formal or ceremonial appearance. This is our mainstream historical fact, summarizing the multifaceted reasons behind their popularity. A quirky tidbit about the beliefs surrounding hair and wigs involves the idea that hair itself was sometimes seen as impure or associated with the wild, untamed aspects of nature, contrasting with the Egyptian value of order and cleanliness. Shaving the head could therefore be seen as an act of purification, making the clean, artificial, perfectly styled wig a symbol of civilization, control, and purity, suitable for interacting with others, especially in formal or religious contexts. Imagine viewing your natural hair as somehow less pure than a wig made from someone else's hair. There's joke number 2. My natural hair. It's far too earthy. This wig, however, is perfectly civilized. Historians debate the primary motivation behind the widespread wig wearing among the Egyptian elite. While hygiene was certainly a practical benefit in the climate, was it the overwhelming driving force, what with wigs being primarily functional coverings for shaved heads, or was status display the more significant social factor? With wigs evolving into elaborate fashion statements that were the main reason for shaving the head in the first place. Did the balance of motivations change over different historical periods? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, understanding the complex interplay of practical needs and social signaling that made wigs so important. These multiple, interconnected reasons, hygiene, protection, status, fashion, formality, and the desire for an idealized look, made wigs indispensable accessories for the ancient Egyptian elite. They were not just alternative hairstyles, they were integral to identity and social presentation. Joke number 3. You imagine a conversation. Nice wig is that pure human hair. Very subtle. Understanding why they wore them is the first step to understanding their peculiar etiquette, especially when attending a social gathering. We've explored the many fascinating reasons why ancient Egyptians, especially the elite, relied so heavily on wigs for hygiene, protection from the intense sun, as powerful symbols of status and fashion, and for presenting the correct formal appearance. But what exactly were these elaborate hairpieces, seen in countless depictions, actually made from? They weren't spun from magic or woven from sunlight. They were crafted from natural materials, primarily hair and plant fibers. The quality and cost of a wig were largely determined by the materials used. The most prized material, especially for the elaborate, high-status wigs worn by the elite, was human hair. This provided the most natural look and drape. Human hair would be carefully cleaned, likely treated with oils or perfumes, and sometimes dyed, typically dark brown or black, although other colors might have been achieved. For less expensive wigs, or to add bulk and structure, Animal hair was also used, primarily sheep wool. Wool was readily available, could be cleaned and dyed, and provided volume. However, wool is coarser and has a different texture than human hair, resulting in a less naturalistic appearance. Plant fibers, such as flax, the same material used for linen fabric or fibers from palm leaves, were also used particularly for simpler or cheaper wigs, or sometimes as a base structure onto which hair was attached. These plant fiber wigs would have been stiffer and less flowing than hair wigs. Once the hair or fibers were prepared, they were crafted into a wig. Wig making was a skilled and time-consuming craft, likely undertaken by specialist artisans. The strands of hair or fiber were attached to a base that would sit on the wearer's head. This base was often a mesh cap made from linen or a network of strong cords. The individual strands or small braids of hair fiber were then attached to this base using various techniques. A common method involved using a sticky adhesive, such as melted beeswax, natural resin, or plant gum, to literally glue the hair strands onto the base, layering them to create thickness and shape. The hair might also be braided or knotted into place, reinforcing the attachment. Imagine the process sitting at a workbench, taking small bundles of hair or fiber, applying a dollop of warm beeswax or resin, and carefully pressing it onto the mesh cap, building up the wig layer by layer. The smell of melting beeswax or sticky resin would have been ever present in a wig maker's workshop. Sensory details the feel of soft human hair, coarse wool, or stiff plant fiber, the distinct smell of warm beeswax or resin, the visual of strands being attached to a mesh base, the sticky feel of the adhesive. Ancient Egyptian wigs, particularly those for the elite and for formal occasions, were primarily made from human hair, which was the most valued material, although cleaned and prepared sheep wool and plant fibers like flax were also used for different qualities and price points. The strands of hair or fiber were skillfully attached to a base, often a mesh cap or cord network using natural adhesives like beeswax, resin, or plant gum, and sometimes braided or knotted into place. This is our mainstream historical fact, detailing the materials and basic construction. The length, density, and style of the wig determined the amount of material needed. Large, elaborate wigs required significant quantities of hair, making them inherently more expensive. The quality of the hair, its length, thickness, whether it was human or animal, and the skill of the wig maker in constructing and styling it contributed to the wig's value and its ability to signal the wearer's status. A quirky tidbit about wig materials involves the possibility of sourcing hair from different places, or having specific preferences for certain types of hair. While some hair would have come from the Egyptians themselves, either grown out or possibly from funerary practices, there's speculation that high-quality hair for elite wigs might have been acquired through trade networks from other regions, or that certain textures or colors of hair were particularly desirable. Imagine a market specifically for different qualities and origins of human hair for wig making. There's joke number one. Madam, this isn't just any human hair, this is premium imported hair, guaranteed to add at least 2 cubits to your perceived social standing. Historians debate the primary sources of human hair used for elite wigs in ancient Egypt. Were people perhaps servants, or those of lower status selling their hair? Was it collected from combs or from individuals after death? Or was there a more organized system of acquiring hair, potentially even through trade networks from neighboring regions, to supply the demand for high-quality elite wigs? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, understanding where all that precious human hair came from. The feel and appearance of different materials would have been noticeable. A wig of fine human hair would have been soft and relatively lightweight despite the adhesives, moving more naturally. A wool wig might have felt coarser, perhaps hotter, and held styles differently. Plant fiber wigs would have been the stiffest and likely used for very specific, perhaps more symbolic or cheaper styles. You can tell the difference by looking, and likely by touching, though touching someone else's wig at a party might be complicated, as we'll see. Turning these raw materials, hair, wool, flax, beeswax, into the perfectly styled Elaborate hairpieces seen in Egyptian art required immense skill and artistry. Joke number two. You look at a particularly complex braided wig. Yep, just a few hundred hours of knotting and gluing. Easy. These wigs weren't just functional items, they were crafted works of art and symbols of the wearer's place in society. Joke number three. You imagine explaining your job. I take hair, glue it to a cap, and help people look important. It's an ancient craft. Understanding the materials and construction is key to appreciating the value and significance of these ancient Egyptian accessories. You've seen what ancient Egyptian wigs were made from: human hair, wool, plant fibers, held together with beeswax and skill, crafted by specialist artisans. But once made, a wig wasn't just something to cover your head for practical or basic hygienic reasons. It was a statement, a billboard, a carefully chosen piece of visual communication. Its size, its material, its style, all spoke volumes about who you were in Egyptian society, particularly your wealth and social standing. Ancient Egyptian wigs were not uniform. While certain general styles were popular during different historical periods, within those styles there was immense variation in quality, density, and complexity. And these variations were directly linked to status. More material, finer material, and more intricate styling all meant higher cost and thus indicated a higher position in the social hierarchy, at least among the elite who could afford wigs in the first place. Think about the sheer volume of hair or fiber needed for a large, dense wig that might reach the shoulders or even chest. Acquiring, cleaning, preparing, and attaching all that material was time-consuming and costly. Therefore, a wig with more bulk and greater length immediately signaled wealth. Size mattered. The bigger your wig, the more resources you likely commanded. Beyond size, the material was crucial. Wigs made entirely or primarily from human hair were the most prestigious and expensive, offering the most natural look and ability to be styled intricately. Wigs made from wool were less costly, and those from plant fibers the cheapest. So, a large wig made of human hair conveyed a much higher status than an equally large wig made of wool. It was about quality as well as quantity. Styling added another layer. Simple. Short bob-like wigs were common, but less elaborate than wigs made of thousands of tiny braids, or those curled into perfect, tight ringlets that held their shape. Intricate styling required more material, more skill in wig making, and more effort or staff in maintenance. A wig with perfectly formed, enduring curls, or one composed of countless precisely arranged braids, was a masterpiece of craftsmanship and a clear sign of the wearer's importance. Looking at depictions in ancient Egyptian art, on tomb walls, stelae, or statues, you see this visual hierarchy of wigs clearly. Figures of lower status might be shown with very short natural hair or simple, small caps. As you move up the social scale, you see progressively larger, denser, and more elaborately styled wigs. Simple short bob wigs were common, perhaps representing a basic level of elite or official status. Wigs reaching shoulder length, often depicted as layers of curled strands or thick braids, indicated higher standing. The most elite individuals, high officials, priests, and royalty are depicted wearing the largest, most elaborate wigs, sometimes reaching chest length or wider, composed of complex layers, waves, or thousands of fine braids, often topped with a diadem or headpiece. Sensory details the visual of different wig densities and lengths, the implied weight of a massive wig, the visual richness of intricate braided or curled styles. At a glance, simply by observing the size, density, and visible material style of someone's wig, you could gain a quick, albeit general idea of their position within the elite circles of ancient Egypt. It was a readily readable visual code of social status. And at the very top, the pharaoh and royalty had access to the most magnificent wigs of all, often depicted in highly formal, stylized forms that were as much crowns or symbols of divine kingship as they were hairpieces. These royal wigs, like the Nemes headcloth, which, while sometimes made of fabric, drew on wig conventions and was often depicted with wig-like precision, were ultimate symbols of power and authority, building on the general wig as status concept. In ancient Egypt, particularly among the elite, the size, density, quality of material with human hair being most prestigious, and complexity of styling of an individual's wig were highly significant visual indicators of their wealth, social status, and relative importance within the hierarchy. This is our mainstream historical fact, cementing the wig's role as a status marker. A quirky tidbit illustrating the emphasis on wig size and status involves specific depictions in art or mentions in texts where they exist of unusually massive or elaborate wigs associated with very high-ranking officials or royal family members. Sometimes, the sheer volume of hair or the complexity of the braiding seems almost physically impossible to wear comfortably, suggesting that the symbolic weight of the wig as a status marker could sometimes outweigh practicality. Imagine a wig so large and heavy it looked like a small, perfectly styled bush on your head. There's joke number one. My wig's not just a fashion statement, it's a structural marvel. Requires its own support system. There is some debate whether there were informal expectations or even sumptuary law-like pressures to wear a wig appropriate to your station, and perhaps disapproval for trying to wear one that was too grand. Historians debate the precision of the correlation between specific wig styles and strict social hierarchy or official titles in ancient Egypt. While size and material were clear indicators of general elite status and wealth, was there a rigid visual code where a particular wig style, e.g., a certain number of braids, a specific length consistently corresponded to a very specific title or rank within the administration or priesthood across different periods? Or was it a more general, flexible indicator of wealth and belonging to the broader elite class? With styles changing with fashion, this is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to decode just how specific the wig's social message was. Comparing this explicit display of status through a visible accessory like a wig to modern status symbols is interesting. While we have designer clothes, luxury cars, or expensive jewelry, few single items of clothing or personal adornment so immediately and universally signaled one's position in the way an ancient Egyptian wig did among the elite. Modern aside, it's like if everyone's job title or bank balance was somehow instantly visible based on their hairstyle. Understanding that wig size showed status is crucial for interpreting ancient Egyptian art and understanding the social dynamics of the elite. It made the choice of wig for any important occasion, like attending a party, a significant decision about how you presented yourself and your place in the world. Joke number two. You look at someone across the party with an enormous wig, clearly important, or just has excellent taste in large hair. These carefully chosen hairpieces were essential tools for navigating the social landscape. Joke number three. You adjust your own wig. Hope this says mid-level official but with excellent prospects. And also, clean scalp. You've seen what ancient Egyptian wigs were made from. Human hair, wool, plant fibers, held together with beeswax and skill. You've also learned how their size, material, and style were powerful indicators of wealth and status among the elite, a clear visual code in Egyptian society. But a person of status didn't just own one wig, the largest or most elaborate one they could afford. Just like you wouldn't wear the same outfit to the gym as you would to a formal dinner, ancient Egyptians often owned a collection of wigs, choosing the right hairpiece for the right moment and the right level of formality. And there was a clear distinction between the wig you might wear for basic daily life and the one you would choose for a special occasion, like attending a party. For everyday wear, many elite Egyptians would opt for simpler, less elaborate wigs. These would typically be smaller, shorter, and less dense than their formal counterparts. They might be made from less expensive materials, perhaps wool or even plant fibers, or less perfectly processed human hair. The styling would be more functional, simpler braids or layers that were easy to maintain. The primary purpose of these daily wigs was to provide that essential head covering for hygiene and sun protection over a shaved or very short head, while still maintaining a respectable, well-groomed appearance for daily activities and less formal interactions. Sensory details imagine the feel of a relatively lightweight, perhaps coarser, daily wig, the feeling of relief from the sun compared to a bare scalp, the smell of a clean wig. These everyday wigs allowed for comfort and practicality in the Egyptian climate. A large, heavy wig would be cumbersome for daily tasks and activities. The simpler daily wig was about maintaining a consistent, clean appearance without the fuss and weight of a more elaborate piece. Special occasion wigs, however, were an entirely different matter. These were the showpieces, the status symbols we discussed earlier, when attending a formal banquet, a religious ceremony, an important official function, or a social gathering like a party. The wig was elevated from a practical covering to a central element of elaborate, formal dress. These wigs were significantly larger, much denser, and far more intricate in their styling. They would be made from the finest human hair, styled into complex arrangements of thousands of tiny braids, perfect tight curls, or elaborate layers and waves that held their shape. The size and elaboration discussed in Section 3, the shoulder-length bobs, the chest-length braided cascades, the massive layered styles primarily apply to these special occasion wigs. They were designed to signal the wearer's wealth and status unequivocally, and to fit the grandeur and formality of the event. Choosing the right party wig was a deliberate decision. Selecting the piece that best reflected your status and adhered to the expectations of the gathering. Ancient Egyptians, particularly among the elite, commonly owned multiple wigs of different styles and materials, with simpler, often smaller and less elaborate wigs typically used for daily wear serving hygienic and protective functions over shaved or very short hair, and larger, denser, more elaborately styled and often costlier wigs reserved specifically for formal occasions, ceremonies, and social gatherings like parties, where they were crucial for status display and adhering to social etiquette. This is our mainstream historical fact, clarifying the different roles of different wigs. Changing from a simple daily wig to a grand party wig would have been part of the larger process of getting ready for an event. Imagine removing the lighter, everyday piece, perhaps tidying your shaved scalp or short hair underneath, and then carefully placing the heavy, intricately styled formal wig onto your head. It would require careful positioning to ensure it sat correctly and securely. The transformation in appearance would have been dramatic, moving from a relatively understated daily look to a full, elaborate, party-ready presentation. Sensory details the feel of removing one wig and putting on another, one lighter, one heavier. The visual change in your reflection, the smell of a freshly prepared or stored party wig, perhaps perfumed. The wig was central to presenting your best appearance for a party. It was as important as choosing your finest linen garment, your most impressive jewelry, or applying your makeup. Your wig was your crowning glory for the evening, a key component of your social identity and status display at the gathering. A quirky tidbit about daily wigs might involve specific, very simple styles used only for certain tasks or times of day. Some depictions show people, often servants or workers, but perhaps elite in very casual settings, wearing extremely short, tight-fitting cap-like wigs, almost like a skull cap made of hair or fiber, which would be highly practical for keeping the head clean and cool during physical work. But certainly not for a party. Imagine having a specific gardening wig or baking wig. There's joke number one, running errands in my party wig heavens. No, this calls for the sensible daily bob. Historians debate how strictly the distinction between daily wear wigs and formal occasion wigs was observed for specific social contexts and events. Was there a clear, understood code dictating exactly which wig style was appropriate for a specific type of party, official meeting, or religious ceremony? Or was there more personal discretion within the elite, where individuals chose from their collection based on their personal preference and what they felt was appropriate for the perceived level of formality of the event? With the key being that the wig was clean, well maintained, and generally suitable for displaying status. This is our open scholarly debate phrase in understanding the rigidity of the wig dress code. Understanding the difference between everyday and party wigs highlights the significance of the party context itself. Attending a gathering required stepping up your appearance, making a conscious effort to display your status and adhere to social norms. Joke number 2, you look at your wig collection. Which one says, important official who is also here to subtly judge everyone else's hair? The choice of wig was a key part of this preparation. Joke number 3, you adjust a heavy party wig. Right, wigs on. Operation Look Fabulous and Important is go. You understand why ancient Egyptians wore wigs. For hygiene, protection, status, and style, you know what they were made from. Hair, wool, fiber, glue. You've seen how their size and style signaled status with different wigs for daily life versus special occasions. Now, let's step away from the general concepts and imagine you've received an invitation to an elite party, a banquet or gathering in ancient Egypt. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard of your villa, and it's time to prepare. Getting ready for such an event was far from a quick affair. It was a meticulous, multi-step process designed to transform you into the perfect vision of elite Egyptian style and social readiness. Preparation would begin well before the guests were expected. It often started with purification, a bath to cleanse the body. Water was precious, but for an important social event, it was essential to be clean. After bathing, the body would be anointed with scented oils and perfumes, made from flowers like lotus, lily, or jasmine, mixed with oils. These weren't just for smelling good. They also helped moisturize the skin in the dry climate. Makeup was essential for both men and women, particularly for the eyes, using kohl, usually black, made from ground minerals to outline the eyes, creating that distinctive Egyptian look, and green pigments for the eyelids. Red ochre might be used for lips and cheeks. Then came the clothing fine linen garments, often sheer or intricately pleated, draped and tied in elegant ways. Jewelry was added, broad collars of beads and precious stones, bracelets, armlets, anklets, earrings, all designed to create a dazzling, refined appearance. Sensory details the cool feel of water during bathing, the rich, sweet smell of perfumes and scented oils being applied, the feel of smooth oils on your skin, the cool touch of linen garments and metal or stone jewelry, the smell of makeup, mineral pigments, and then, the crowning step, literally and figuratively the wig. After your head was clean-shaven or your natural hair kept very short as was typical, it was time to choose the hairpiece that would complete your transformation. You would go to your collection, perhaps stored in a special box or on stands, and select the perfect party wig. The choice would depend on the formality of the event. Your outfit, some wigs complemented specific garment styles, current fashion trends, and perhaps even who you knew would be attending. You wanted to make the right impression among your peers. Selecting the perfect wig required an eye for detail and a sense of occasion. Was it a grand banquet hosted by a very high official? You might choose your largest, densest, most intricately braided or curled human hair wig? Perhaps one with gold accents woven in a topic for later. Was it a slightly less formal gathering? A smaller, but still elaborate, wig might be appropriate. The chosen wig had to be clean, perfectly styled, and free from any imperfections. Once selected, the wig needed to be carefully affixed to your head. The base of the wig, the mesh cap or network of cords would be placed over your clean-shaven scalp or short hair. It needed to sit evenly and securely. Some wigs had ties or ribbons that could be fastened under the chin or at the back of the head to help keep them in place, especially for larger, heavier pieces. You would carefully adjust it, ensuring it sat at the correct angle and that the hairline looked natural or as natural as a wig intended to look. Artificial could look. Sensory details the feel of the inner cap of the wig against your scalp, perhaps slightly coarse or smooth, the weight of the elaborate wig being placed and adjusted, the feeling of it sitting securely on your head, Any final touches or accessories might be added to the wig after it was in place. Ribbons woven into braids, decorative pins, or perhaps a small diadem or headpiece placed atop the wig for extra adornment and status. And famously, the perfumed cone, which we will explore in more detail, was often placed right on top of the head or wig, melting throughout the evening. For elite individuals, this entire process of preparation, bathing, oiling, makeup, dressing, and wig fitting, would often be done with the assistance of servants. You would have staff dedicated to helping you achieve the perfect appearance for social events, highlighting the amount of time and resources dedicated to personal presentation among the elite. Modern aside, it was like having a personal styling team, makeup artist, and hairdresser all rolled into one. Dedicating hours to getting you ready for a party makes your quick shower and getting dressed seem rather low effort. Preparation for elite social gatherings in ancient Egypt was an elaborate and time-consuming ritual involving multiple steps including bathing, anointing the body with scented oils and perfumes, applying intricate makeup, dressing in fine linen garments and elaborate jewelry, and the careful selection and precise affixing of a suitable elaborate wig, a process often performed with the assistance of personal servants. This is our mainstream historical fact, covering the scope of the pre-party transformation. A quirky tidbit about pre-party preparation involves specific, perhaps unusual, grooming rituals mentioned in texts or depicted in art. Some depictions show careful attention given to fingernails and toenails, sometimes painted. There are also mentions of using depilatory creams or paste to remove unwanted body hair, further emphasizing the Egyptian ideal of cleanliness and smooth skin. Imagine having a specific party-ready depilation routine. There's joke number one. Right, nails done, eyes done, body hair removed. Just the wig to go and possibly the melting cone. Historians debate the level of standardization versus individual variation in the elaborate grooming and dressing rituals performed by the ancient Egyptian elite for social events. Were there strict, widely followed beauty standards and preparation steps that everyone adhered to, or did individual preference? Differences in wealth affecting access to servants and materials, or specific social circles lead to significant variations in how people prepared for the same type of event. This is our open scholarly debate phrase, understanding how much personal choice was involved in this seemingly formulaic process. The feeling of being fully ready, adorned, and transformed for the party would have been significant. The weight of the elaborate wig, the smooth feel of the oils and makeup, the rustle of fine linen, all contributed to the sensation of being prepared to face the social scene. Joke number two. You look in a polished bronze mirror? Nailed it. If this wig doesn't scream status and impeccable hygiene, I don't know what does. Did you see? This careful preparation, culminating in the perfect wig, was essential for navigating the social dynamics of the party. Joke number three. You imagine someone arriving slightly underdressed, with a less than perfect wig? The horror you are prepared? Bathed, oiled, made up with kohl-lined eyes, dressed in fine pleated linen and dazzling jewelry, and most importantly, wearing your carefully selected, perfectly affixed party wig, perhaps adorned with ribbons or pins, and topped with that peculiar melting cone. You have been transformed into the image of an elite Egyptian ready for a social gathering. Now it's time to make your entrance, to arrive at the party, and put your impressive wig and your entire presentation on display. Imagine arriving at the host's villa or estate. The sounds of the party reach you before you enter. Perhaps music from harps or flutes, the murmur of many voices, laughter. As you step into the gathering space, perhaps a beautiful garden courtyard illuminated by oil lamps, or a spacious, decorated room, the atmosphere envelops you. The air is filled with the scent of perfumes from guests, perhaps from burning incense or flowers, the aroma of food being prepared or served, the general party smell. The scene is visually rich people in fine garments, glimmering jewelry, and a fascinating array of elaborate wigs. Sensory details the sounds of the party. Music, voices, laughter, the mix of smells, perfumes, food, flowers. The visual splendor of the decorated space and the dressed-up guests. The moment of arrival is one of presentation. You are seen. You make your entrance, and the first impression is your overall appearance. Everything you've done in your meticulous preparation, your clothing, your jewelry, your makeup, and most prominently, your wig, contributes to this initial visual statement. Your wig, in particular, is a key part of this moment. Its size, its style, its apparent material quality, perhaps the accessories adorning it, all are immediately visible and communicate your status and your adherence to the expectations of the event. You are not just arriving, you are arriving in costume, with your wig being the most significant piece. As you make your way into the gathering, you see other guests, and inevitably, your eyes and theirs are drawn to the wigs on display. You observe the styles worn by your peers, perhaps silently comparing your own wig to theirs. Is someone wearing a particularly large or fashionable style? Is a rival official trying to outdo you with the density of their braids? It was a subtle or perhaps not so subtle form of social assessment and competition happening right there on people's heads. You note the different styles, sizes, and materials, reading the visual cues of status and judging adherence to current fashion. Elite social gatherings in ancient Egypt, such as banquets and parties, were important occasions for displaying wealth, social status, and adherence to current fashion through elaborate personal appearance. The carefully selected and often impressive wig was a central and highly visible component of this presentation upon arrival and throughout the event. This is our mainstream historical fact, highlighting the importance of appearance and wigs at these parties. Greetings are exchanged, often with a brief bow or a respectful gesture. In these first interactions, appearance is the primary message. Your wig speaks for you initially, signaling your place in society before you even utter a word. You might receive compliments on your appearance, perhaps specifically on your wig or its styling. As you begin to mingle, moving through the gathering space, you are part of this moving display of elite Egyptian society. A collection of carefully curated appearances. You circulate, chatting with acquaintances, being introduced to others, all while conscious of your own presentation and observing everyone else's. The feeling of your elaborate party wig in place amidst all the others is significant. You are aware of its weight. Some of those large wigs were heavy, its style, and how it contributes to your overall look. You might make slight adjustments to ensure it's sitting perfectly. You are part of the visual spectacle, both an observer and a participant in the display of status and fashion. Sensory details the weight of your wig, perhaps the faint smell of its perfume or the melting cone. The feeling of being looked at and assessed, the visual richness of a room full of elaborately coiffed heads. A quirky tidbit about arrivals involves the greetings themselves. Guests were often greeted with garlands of flowers or had perfume dabbed on them upon entering the party, adding to the sensory richness of the event and perhaps serving as a small welcoming ritual. Imagine arriving, being given a beautiful flower garland to wear around your neck. Hopefully it doesn't clash with your wig, and then having someone add a touch of perfume to your hands or clothes, right as you're trying to make your grand entrance with your elaborate hairpiece. There's joke number one. Oh, lovely garland hope. It doesn't get tangled in my 1,000 tiny braids. Historians debate the extent to which appearance and status display were the absolute primary focus upon arrival at these ancient Egyptian elite parties, versus the importance of social networking, political maneuvering, or simply enjoying the food, drink, music, and entertainment. While visual presentation was clearly crucial, was it the overwhelming concern, with people primarily assessing each other's status through their wigs and clothing? Or was it a necessary baseline, setting the stage for other forms of social interaction? Historians also debate how strictly the social pressure to conform to specific dress and wig standards was enforced. Were there explicit rules, or was it more about unspoken expectations and subtle social judgment? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, understanding the true weight and nature of the initial wig display moment. Making your entrance at an ancient Egyptian party was an act of deliberate visual communication. Your carefully chosen and prepared wig was a crucial part of that communication, signaling your status and readiness to engage in the complex social dynamics of the gathering. Joke number 2. You nod to someone with an even bigger wig. Greetings. Clearly more important than me, person. It was the moment where all your preparation culminated in a public statement. Joke number 3. You adjust your wig again. Right. Wigs on. Game face on. Let the social assessment begin. You've arrived at the party, made your entrance, and showcased your impressive wig among the gathered elite. The room is a visual feast of elaborate hairpieces, a clear display of status and style, glimmering with adornments and perhaps subtly scented. But simply wearing an expensive, perfectly styled wig isn't enough. Once you're mingling, engaging in conversation, enjoying the music and refreshments, there's a whole set of unspoken rules, a peculiar etiquette that governs how you behave while adorned with this prominent hairpiece, and how people interact with each other in this world of elaborate wigs. These rules weren't likely written down in a formal book of etiquette. They were learned through observation, social cues, and perhaps gentle correction from elders or those more experienced in elite gatherings. Adhering to them was part of demonstrating your sophistication, your understanding of the social landscape, and your rightful place within these circles. One key aspect of wig etiquette revolved around keeping the wig itself in place and maintaining its pristine appearance. You needed to move through the gathering, sit, stand, perhaps even participate in dancing or games, all while ensuring your elaborate and potentially heavy wig remained perfectly affixed. This required a certain posture and awareness of your head movements. Avoid rapid, jerky motions that could dislodge it. When sitting, be mindful of the back of the wig against furniture. Dancing would require skill to keep everything in place. Sensory details, the awareness of the wig's weight and stability, the feeling of subtly adjusting your posture, the visual of many elaborate wigs swaying or remaining upright during activity. Another unspoken rule was likely about not touching one's own wig excessively in public. Constantly fiddling with your wig, adjusting it, or running your hands over it might be seen as a sign of nervousness, insecurity, or worse, implying the wig wasn't properly secured or styled to begin with. You'd make subtle, discreet adjustments if absolutely necessary, but generally, the wig, once affixed, was meant to be forgotten by the wearer, at least outwardly. Perhaps even more crucial was the etiquette around not touching other people's wigs. A wig was a highly personal item, a symbol of status, hygiene, and careful presentation. To touch someone else's wig without explicit permission would likely be seen as incredibly rude, intrusive, and disrespectful. It's akin to messing with someone's carefully styled hair today, but amplified by the wig's status as a costly accessory. Imagine the horror of someone reaching out and casually tugging on a braid or poking a curl. Joke number 1. Oh, is that real human hair? Let me just touch his wig. Record scratch, and that's how the diplomatic incident began. Maintaining the wig's appearance throughout the event was also part of the unspoken expectation. Wigs could potentially gather dust, become slightly disheveled from movement or contact, or be affected by humidity or heat. While minor imperfections might be overlooked, a wig that became significantly messy or dislodged might reflect poorly on the wearer. The melting perfumed cone, often worn atop the head or wig, added a peculiar, expected element to this etiquette. Its gradual melting, releasing scent and oils down the wig and onto the wearer's shoulders, was a deliberate part of the party experience. Guests were expected to be aware of this process and accept the gradual transformation of their appearance and scent as the evening progressed. We'll delve into the cone more specifically soon. Handling potential wig mishaps discreetly was another skill. If a pin came loose, a braid started to unravel, or the wig shifted slightly, you would try to correct it subtly, perhaps excusing yourself momentarily or using a hand fan to provide cover while you made a quick adjustment. A major wig malfunction in public would likely be quite embarrassing. A quirky tidbit about wig etiquette might involve specific, unusual rules related to certain situations. Perhaps there were specific expectations for how men's versus women's wigs were treated in conversation. Jai Ji, making eye contact with the person's face, not their elaborate hairpiece. Or maybe a custom related to certain types of activities, like if dancing involved movements that were particularly challenging to rigid wig styles. There might have been specific ways of holding your head or choosing a slightly less monumental wig for that activity. Imagine a dance where everyone has to move very, very slowly to protect their hairpieces. There's joke number 2. The ancient Egyptian waltz mostly consists of polite nodding to ensure your wig stays perfectly centered. While not always explicitly written down, ancient Egyptian elite social gatherings likely had complex and influential unspoken rules and expectations regarding the proper way to wear and maintain elaborate wigs, as well as how guests should interact or strictly not interact with each other's wigs in a social space, with adherence being a sign of sophistication and social understanding. This is our mainstream historical fact, confirming the existence of this wig etiquette. Historians debate the extent and rigidity of these unspoken social etiquette rules, specifically governing wig appearance and interaction at elite parties. Were they primarily informal norms that varied between different social circles or time periods? Or were they more rigid expectations that could lead to significant social disapproval or embarrassment if broken? How strongly would non-adherence actually impact one's social standing or reputation? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, questioning just how strict the wig-related social code truly was. Navigating an ancient Egyptian party meant being constantly aware of your appearance, and especially your wig, and adhering to these unspoken rules. It added a layer of peculiar social choreography to the gathering. Joke number 3. You carefully take a sip of wine, mindful of your wig. Drinking gracefully while avoiding wig entanglement is a skill. It was about presenting the perfect image and respecting the equally careful presentations of others. You've navigated the arrival, made your entrance, and are mindful of the unspoken rules governing wig etiquette at the party, keeping your wig in place, not touching others' hairpieces, maintaining decorum while topped with a significant hairpiece. But there's one visually striking, aromatically potent, and rather peculiar accessory you or other guests might be wearing on top of your impressive wigs, or perhaps directly on a closely shaved natural head, if your chosen style allowed for it. Though less commonly depicted this way, the perfumed cone. Look around the party, at the assembled elite in their fine linen and glittering jewelry, and you'll likely see that many of them, both men and women, have a pale, conical object perched right on top of their elaborate wigs. This is the perfumed cone, a staple of elite banquets and parties depicted in ancient Egyptian art. At elite social gatherings in ancient Egypt, guests, both men and women, often wore a distinctive solid cone, typically depicted as pale or white in color, perched directly on top of their heads or wigs. This cone was believed to be made of perfumed animal fat or beeswax and designed to slowly melt throughout the evening, releasing fragrance. This is our mainstream historical fact, confirming this unusual custom. What were these peculiar cones made of based on archaeological evidence and analysis of residues found in tombs and on artifacts? They were likely made of a solid fat base, either animal fat like beef or goose fat, or possibly a type of wax, such as beeswax. This fat or wax was then heavily infused with concentrated perfumes and scented oils made from fragrant plants. Flowers like lotus, lily, jasmine, or resins like myrrh and frankincense. The mixture would be molded into a conical shape and allowed to solidify. The purpose of the cone was ingenious in its own way, if slightly peculiar to modern sensibilities. As the party progressed, the heat of the room, the warmth generated by many bodies, and the heat of the Egyptian climate itself would cause the solid fat cone to slowly warm up and begin to melt. The melted, perfumed fat, now turned into fragrant oil, would then trickle down. Imagine the process: you're standing, chatting. The party is in full swing, and you feel a slow, warm trickle starting at the top of your head. The perfumed oil melts and runs down over your elaborate wig, saturating the hairpiece with scent, and then continues down onto your shoulders and clothing. This deliberate melting served to refresh and intensify the fragrance around the wearer throughout the evening, keeping them smelling pleasant despite the heat and activity. Sensory details the visual of the cone gradually changing shape or diminishing. The slow, warm trickle felt on your scalp or through the wig. The intensifying smell of the released perfume filling the air around you and mingling with other scents. The feel of the oil spreading. The visual spectacle of a room full of people with melting cones on their heads must have been quite something. As the evening wore on, you would see the cones gradually shrinking, perhaps starting to list to one side, the elaborate wigs beneath them becoming shinier and darker as they became saturated with perfumed oil. It was a form of active, visible perfuming, an expected part of the social experience. Joke number 1. Excuse me, is your cone melting beautifully, or are you just particularly hot tonight? This was clearly a deliberate custom, not an accidental melting of something left on your head. The cones were designed for this purpose, and the process of their melting and the release of fragrance was an anticipated and likely appreciated aspect of the party. A quirky tidbit about the perfumed cones involves speculation on specific, unusual scents or additives used, or anecdotes related to their melting. While floral and resin scents were common, some might have contained more exotic perfumes acquired through trade. There's also the practical question of managing the melt rate. Perhaps the cones were made with different types of fat or wax depending on the expected temperature of the gathering, or maybe larger cones were used for longer parties. Imagine a cone melting too quickly and resulting in a sudden, overwhelming flood of perfumed oil. There's joke number 2. My cone seems to be performing an unscheduled rapid meltdown. I believe I've just inadvertently created a localized perfume tsunami. Or perhaps a social faux pas involved a cone that didn't melt properly, leaving the wearer less fragrant than expected. Scholars debate the exact primary composition of the perfumed cones depicted in ancient Egyptian art and found in some archaeological contexts. Were they predominantly made of animal fat, or was beeswax or another vegetable wax more commonly used? Perhaps varying by period or region, scholars also debate the frequency of their use. Were they worn universally at all elite gatherings? Or were they specific to certain types of parties, ceremonies, or perhaps limited to the highest echelons of society? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the precise nature and ubiquity of this peculiar accessory. The perfumed cone was a unique, functional, and visually striking accessory, central to the sensory experience of ancient Egyptian parties. It added another layer to the elaborate preparation and the etiquette surrounding appearance, ensuring that guests not only looked the part, but also smelled delightful, or at least strongly perfumed throughout the evening. Joke number 3. You feel the trickle again. Ah, refreshing. Smells like expensive rendering. It was a peculiar custom, highlighting the importance of personal fragrance and visible display in their social rituals. You've navigated wig etiquette, the unspoken rules of keeping your elaborate hairpiece pristine and avoiding the social faux pas of touching others' wigs. You've perhaps experienced the slow, peculiar melting of the perfumed cone atop your head, adding fragrance as the evening warms up. These elaborate hairpieces were essential for status and style at the party. But let's step back for a moment and consider the underlying practical challenge of wearing a dense, heavy wig in the Egyptian climate. Let's be honest, ancient Egypt is hot, and comfort, in this context, might have been a secondary concern to appearance. Egypt has a hot, sunny climate, particularly in the southern regions, but even in the north where cities like Memphis or Heliopolis were located, temperatures can be high, especially during the long summer months. Sunlight is intense and the air is often dry. Ancient Egypt has a predominantly hot, often arid climate, which significantly influenced clothing, grooming practices like shaving the head for hygiene and comfort, and presented practical challenges regarding comfort when wearing dense, elaborate wigs and layered clothing at social gatherings? This is our mainstream historical fact, setting the environmental scene. Wearing a dense, elaborate wig, particularly one made from heat-trapping materials like human hair or wool, would have presented a significant challenge regarding comfort. These wigs, designed for volume and style, would act like a thick hat, trapping heat against the scalp and head. Beneath the wig, on your probably shaved head, sweat would likely accumulate, leading to a feeling of heat buildup, dampness, and potential itchiness over the course of an evening. Sensory details the feeling of trapped heat under the wig, sweat trickling down your temples or the back of your neck, the scalp feeling damp and possibly itchy, the weight of the wig pressing down. The practice of shaving the head underneath the wig, as we discussed earlier, was primarily for hygiene and to help with cooling when the head was uncovered, or covered with a light linen cap. However, covering that shaved head with a thick wig, especially indoors at a crowded party where bodies generate heat, would likely negate some of that cooling benefit, potentially making you feel hotter than if you had simply had short, natural hair. There's a bit of a paradox here. Outdoors, the wig offered valuable protection from the intense sun on a bare scalp. Indoors, however, especially at a lively gathering with music, dancing, and many people in one space, the wig, particularly a large, dense party wig, could become quite hot and uncomfortable, a symbol of status that also served as a personal heat trap. How did they mitigate this discomfort? While they lacked modern air conditioning, a topic we've already explored, they had some methods. Fine. Sheer linen clothing, commonly worn, helped keep the body relatively cool by allowing air circulation. Handheld fans, made from palm leaves or feathers, were ubiquitous at social gatherings and providing a personal breeze. Seeking out cooler spots in the venue, perhaps a shaded courtyard if the party was held outdoors, or areas near open windows, would also offer some relief. However, the heat trapped by the wig itself would remain a challenge. Were wigs designed with any specific features for ventilation? Evidence is limited, but the mesh cap base might have allowed for some minimal airflow compared to a solid cap, though likely not enough to fully counteract the heat of a dense hairpiece. Ultimately, for elaborate party wigs worn by the elite, comfort was likely sometimes sacrificed for the sake of fashion and status display. The appearance of wealth, adherence to etiquette, and the visual statement of your position in society were paramount. Enduring a degree of heat and discomfort was perhaps seen as a necessary part of presenting the correct image at a high-status event. Joke number 1, my wig is a symbol of my elevated status. It's also a symbol of my commitment to passive sauna therapy. A quirky tidbit about coping with the heat while wigged involves depictions in art. Some tomb paintings or potpourri show guests at parties being offered refreshments, cool drinks, or having perfume dabbed on them, all aimed at increasing comfort in the warm environment. While not specific to the wig, these practices highlight the general awareness of heat at these gatherings and the efforts made to counter it, even if the heaviest source of personal heat, the wig, remained in place. Imagine a servant constantly offering you cool water because you look like you're about to overheat under your elaborate hairpiece. There's joke number 2. More wine, sir? Or would you prefer an ice pack for your head? Scholars debate the extent to which comfort was willingly sacrificed for fashion and status display in the wearing of elaborate Egyptian wigs, particularly at lively social events in a hot climate. Did the desire for status symbols and adherence to fashion standards outweigh considerations of personal comfort? Scholars also question if the design of wigs incorporated any specific, functional features intended to improve ventilation or reduce heat buildup, or if any discomfort was simply accepted as a necessary cost of elite appearance. This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the trade-off between looking good and feeling good. Despite the elegance and social importance, wearing an elaborate wig in the Egyptian heat was a practical challenge, a constant reality beneath the carefully styled exterior. Joke number 3. You feel another trickle of sweat. Yep, status is definitely warm. It highlights the lengths people went to for appearance and status in ancient Egyptian society, even enduring physical discomfort for the sake of the correct social presentation. Wearing elaborate wigs presented challenges in the Egyptian heat: the trapped warmth, the sweat, the potential itchiness, a constant reality beneath the carefully styled exterior. But despite the discomfort, the visual statement was paramount for the elite, and both men and women embraced this form of adornment, although often with distinct styles tailored to their sex and social role. Let's take a closer look at the variety of wigs favored specifically by ancient Egyptian men, particularly for formal occasions like parties. While artistic depictions sometimes show variations across different periods and regions, there are common styles that recur for elite Egyptian men. Generally, men's wigs tended to be shorter and more structured than many of the elaborate long styles favored by women. They often emphasize neatness, order, and symmetry, reflecting the Egyptian ideal of control and balance. One common style for men was a relatively short, dense wig that resembled a modern bob haircut. It typically covered the ears and reached to the nape of the neck or slightly below. These wigs were often depicted with layers of horizontal curls or waves, or composed of very fine, tightly packed braids arranged in horizontal rows. This style offered a clean, dignified look, suitable for daily wear or less formal official duties for many elite men. Sensory details the visual of neat, horizontal rows of curls or braids, the implied density and structure of the wig, the way it framed the face and covered the neck. More elaborate men's wigs for formal occasions could be longer and denser, reaching the shoulders or even the upper chest, but they often maintained that same underlying structure and neatness, appearing as solid masses of perfectly arranged curls or braids. Imagine a dense, shoulder-length wig composed of thousands of tiny, precisely formed braids, each ending in a blunt or slightly tapered tip, sitting perfectly on a man's head. These required significant material and wig-making skill. There were variations within these styles, with different lengths, densities, and patterns of curls or braids appearing fashionable at different times during the long span of ancient Egyptian history. Some depictions show men wearing narrower wigs that fit closely to the head, while others depict broader, more voluminous styles. Men's wig styles could be linked to their profession or rank within the administration, priesthood, or military, as well as general fashion trends. Certain styles might be more commonly depicted for scribes, indicating their learned status. While priests might wear specific types of wigs or head coverings related to their religious duties, sometimes more cap-like or layered, high officials and nobility would wear larger, more elaborate versions reflecting their elevated status, building on the basic bob or layered styles. The choice of wig was part of presenting the correct image for one's position and role in society. Ancient Egyptian men, particularly of the elite class, commonly wore wigs for status, hygiene, and formal appearance. Popular styles depicted in art included relatively short bob styles and longer, dense wigs composed of horizontal rows of layered curls or intricate braids, typically covering the ears and reaching the neck or shoulders, and these styles often differed from those favored by women. This is our mainstream historical fact, outlining common male wig styles. A quirky tidbit about men's wig styles involves some of the very specific or unusual variations seen in certain periods or depictions. Some rare depictions show men wearing wigs with unusual features, such as a very pronounced parting, asymmetrical styling less common, as symmetry was valued, or wigs with integrated features like small pigtails or locks that extended forward over the shoulders in a unique way. Imagine an official attending a party with a perfectly coiffed wig featuring a single, long, curly lock extending down one side of his chest. A subtle but distinct fashion statement. There's joke number one. My wig style is called the distinguished official with the strategically placed important curl. It really screams authority. Historians debate the degree to which specific men's wig styles were formally prescribed or strictly dictated by official rank. Profession, g. priest versus scribe, or precise position in the administration. Was there a rigid visual code where certain titles required specific wig appearances, or were men's wig choices more influenced by broader social status, the size, kind of material we discussed? Personal fashion preferences within elite circles, and the evolving trends over time, with professional or rank-related styles being more about general conventions than strict rules. This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the balance between personal choice and dictated appearance in men's wig fashion. Men's wig styles, with their emphasis on neatness, order, and often a more structured appearance compared to some women's styles, reflected ideals of masculinity, control, and dignity in ancient Egyptian elite society. They were essential accessories for presenting the correct male elite image at social events and in official capacities. Joke number 2. You look at a man's perfectly symmetrical bob wig. Impressive curl definition. Clearly a man who values order. Attending a party meant selecting and wearing the male wig style that appropriately conveyed your status and profession, while hopefully also being relatively comfortable in the heat. Joke number 3. You adjust your own men's wig. Hope this says important, but also capable of navigating a crowded room without snagging my curls on someone else's. These distinctive hairpieces were a key element of the visual language of status and role among ancient Egyptian men. Men of the elite in ancient Egypt wore wigs that conveyed status, order, and dignity, often in structured bob or layered styles, carefully crafted and maintained. But ancient Egyptian women also embracing the wig as a crucial accessory for hygiene, protection, and status, often favored different styles entirely, ones that emphasized length, volume, and intricate artistry, creating striking and elaborate hairpieces for formal occasions. While there was variation across different historical periods, women's wigs were often characterized by their grandeur and complexity, frequently surpassing the typical size and elaboration of men's styles. They were designed to be full, luxurious, and visually stunning, cascading around the face and down the back. Typical women's wig styles seen in art include long, dense wigs covering the shoulders and back, often reaching to the waist or even below. These were not just masses of hair, they were meticulously styled into intricate patterns. Common styles included thousands of tiny, tightly arranged braids, often layered to create volume and flow. Other styles featured elaborate, enduring curls or waves arranged in tiers or cascades. Sometimes, women's wigs combined elements of both braiding and curling. Imagine a wig composed of countless fine braids, perfectly formed and arranged, creating a heavy, flowing mass of dark hair that reached your lower back. Sensory details the visual of the immense volume and length of these wigs, the intricate patterns of the braids or curls up close, the implied weight of the dense material, the glossy look of well-treated hair or fiber. The density and length of women's wigs were also strong indicators of status, just like men's, but often pushed to greater extremes for high-ranking women. The most elite women and royal women are depicted wearing the largest, most voluminous, and most intricately styled wigs, sometimes so wide they seem to extend beyond the shoulders significantly, or so long they reach almost to the knees in formal depictions. Women's wigs were also more frequently and elaborately adorned with accessories. Ribbons, often brightly colored, might be woven into braids or tied around sections of the wig. Beads made from faience, shell, stone, or precious metals could be integrated into the wig itself or attached as dangling elements. Strands of gold, either as wire or thin hammered strips, were sometimes woven into the most prestigious wigs, adding a visible sparkle and immense value. Diadems or elaborate headpieces, often featuring floral motifs. Uraeus cobras for royalty, or symbols of deities, were placed atop the wig, further enhancing its grandeur and symbolic meaning. Sensory details the glint of metal or beads, the visual contrast of colored ribbons or gold against dark hair, the feel of these adornments integrated into the wig. These elaborate styles, showcasing intricate braiding, precise curling, and careful layering, required immense skill from the wig makers. Maintaining such elaborate styles would also have required significant care and attention, likely with the help of servants, ensuring braids remained tight and curls held their shape. Ancient Egyptian women, particularly of the elite class and royalty, wore elaborate and often highly fashionable wigs as crucial accessories for status display and beauty. Popular styles depicted in art were often significantly longer, denser, and more voluminous than men's wigs, characterized by intricate braiding or layered curls, and frequently adorned with accessories like ribbons, beads, and gold. This is our mainstream historical fact, highlighting the characteristics of women's wigs. A quirky tidbit about women's wig styles involves some of the most elaborate or unusual constructions seen in art, sometimes suggesting a blend of wig and attached headdress, or styles that seem almost architectural in their complexity. Some depictions show wigs with multiple distinct sections or elements that appear to be attached or integrated in unusual ways, creating striking and unique silhouettes. Imagine a wig designed with specific loops or structures built into it to hold heavy floral garlands or elaborate headdresses. There's joke number one. My wig isn't just a hairpiece, it's a structural foundation for my fabulous head decorations. Requires its own building code. Historians debate the extent to which ancient Egyptian women's wig styles reflected individual fashion preferences and a desire for personal expression versus being largely dictated by social norms, status requirements, or even age conventions. Was there more room for women to choose unique styles from their collection based on personal taste or current trends, allowing for individual expression within the general parameters of status display? Or were certain styles closely tied to specific ranks, marital status, or age groups, with less room for personal variation compared to men's styles, which might have been more linked to profession? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the balance between personal style and social dictates in women's wig fashion. Women's elaborate wig styles, with their emphasis on length, volume, intricate detail, and adornment, reflected ideals of beauty, status, and fashion in ancient Egyptian elite society. They were essential accessories for presenting the correct female elite image at social events, adding to the visual richness and social complexity of gatherings like parties. Joke number two. You look at a rival's particularly large and elaborate wig. Impressive volume, is that? 3 full heads of human hair. Attending a party meant selecting and wearing the female wig style that not only conveyed your status and beauty, but also showcased the artistry of the wig maker and allowed for the display of stunning accessories. Joke number 3. You adjust your own elaborate wig. Right, wigs on, accessories are shimmering. Operation Look Like a Walking Status Symbol is a go. These complex and fashionable hairpieces were a key element of the visual language of status and beauty among ancient Egyptian women. Ancient Egyptian men and women wore an incredible variety of wigs, from neat bobs to long, elaborate cascades of braids and curls, signaling status and style. These weren't disposable items, they were valuable, often expensive. Accessories crafted with skill from precious materials like human hair. But like any elaborate hairpiece, whether natural or artificial, they didn't stay looking perfect on their own. Keeping these wigs pristine, clean, and perfectly styled required regular, meticulous maintenance. Wigs, especially those made from human hair or wool, could accumulate dust, dirt, sweat, and residue from oils, perfumes, and the peculiar melting cones. They needed to be cleaned to remain hygienic and maintain their appearance. The cleaning process likely involved carefully washing the wig. Water would be used, possibly with some form of ancient cleaning agent. Natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture used by Egyptians for various cleaning and preservation purposes, might have been used in diluted form to wash the hair or fibers in the mesh base. The washing would need to be thorough but gentle to avoid damaging the wig's construction or loosening the attached strands. Sensory details the smell of wet hair, wool, or fiber, the slightly alkaline smell of natron solution, The feel of washing through dense material. After washing, thorough drying was essential to prevent mildew or unpleasant smells. Wigs would likely be hung up or placed on stands in a warm, airy spot to dry completely. Once clean and dry, the wig would need to be restyled to restore its intricate appearance. Braids might need to be tightened or redone. Curls would need to be reset, perhaps using simple ancient methods for curling hair or fibers. Strands that had come loose would need to be reaffixed using beeswax or other adhesives. Combs, likely made from wood, ivory, or bone, would be used to detangle and arrange the hair or fibers. Sensory details the feel of a wooden or ivory comb pulling through hair to fiber, the sticky feel of warm beeswax being reapplied, the smell of beeswax melting. Maintaining the intricate styles of some wigs, thousands of tiny braids, perfect enduring curls, would have been a time-consuming process requiring patience and skill. This work was likely done by servants within wealthy households, or perhaps by specialist wig dressers who provided maintenance services. The perfumed cone residue, the melted fat and oils, would also need to be carefully cleaned from the wig and potentially the underlying scalp short hair after a party. Adding another step to the post-event cleanup. Storing wigs properly when not in use was also important for preserving their shape and protecting them from dust. Insects like moths, which could damage wool or hair, and general damage. Wigs were often kept on purpose-built wig stands or stored carefully in boxes made of wood, reed, or other materials. You might see depictions of wigs sitting neatly on stands, ready to be worn. Sensory details the visual of a perfectly shaped wig sitting on a stand, the feel of a smooth wooden stand. Ancient Egyptian wigs. Being valuable accessories made from organic materials and often intricate construction, required regular cleaning and meticulous maintenance, including washing with water and possibly cleaning agents, restyling, recombing, braiding, resetting curls, regluing loose strands, and careful storage on stands or in boxes to preserve their appearance and longevity. A process often performed by servants or specialist artisans. This is our mainstream historical fact and outlining the essential maintenance process. A quirky tidbit about wig maintenance involves specific tools or methods for styling. Some depictions hint at basic styling tools beyond combs, perhaps simple pins, weights to help set curls, or even molds for shaping specific parts of the wig. There are also mentions of applying oils and fats to the wig after cleaning, not just for scent as with the cone height, but also to keep the hair or fibers supple and lustrous, protecting them from drying out and becoming brittle in the arid climate. Imagine oiling your wig regularly, just like conditioning hair today. There's joke number 1. Time for the wig's deep conditioning treatment. Needs to stay shiny for the next party. Historians debate how frequently wigs were typically cleaned. Was it after every wearing for formal wigs? Or less often? How thorough was the cleaning process for daily wear wigs? Historians also debate the average lifespan of a high-quality wig. Could they last for many years or even decades with proper maintenance? Being repaired and restyled repeatedly? Or did the adhesives or materials eventually degrade, requiring replacement more frequently? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the cycle of use and renewal for these valuable accessories. Keeping a collection of wigs pristine was a significant, ongoing task, a hidden aspect of elite appearance that required time, effort, and resources. It highlights that the value of a wig wasn't just in its initial purchase, but in the continuous investment in its care. Joke number 2. You finish styling a particularly stubborn braid. There, perfect. See you next week for the same process. These well-maintained hairpieces were essential for ensuring that status was consistently displayed, ready for the next party or formal event. Joke number 3. You carefully place a wig on a stand. Rest well, glorious hairpiece. Your next social mission awaits. Keeping your collection of wigs clean and styled was essential, ensuring these valuable accessories remained perfect for parties, official duties, and daily life. But the significance of wigs in ancient Egyptian society extended far beyond just social gatherings. Fashion, and personal hygiene. They held deep importance in religious ceremonies, as part of official regalia, and perhaps most profoundly, in the crucial beliefs about the afterlife. Wigs were not just for the living, they were also seen as necessary for presenting the correct image in the presence of the gods and for the eternal journey after death. In religious ceremonies, priests and priestesses, who often shave their heads as an act of purity and dedication, would wear specific types of wigs or head coverings as part of their ritual attire. These might be different in style or material from everyday wigs, sometimes more stylized or associated with particular deities. Wearing the wig was part of the required transformation from an ordinary person to someone prepared to interact with the divine realm, symbolizing purity, ritual cleanliness, or even a form of identification with the gods who were often depicted wearing elaborate headdresses and stylized wigs themselves. Imagine the solemn atmosphere of a temple ritual, the air thick with incense, and the priests performing their duties, all wearing specific, perhaps heavy and formal, ceremonial wigs. Sensory details the smell of incense, the quiet echoes in the temple, the visual of figures in formal attire and specific wigs performing ritual actions. In official duties, high officials and administrators would wear specific wig styles as part of their formal regalia, symbolizing their office, authority, and status within the state bureaucracy. Just as a uniform today conveys rank and role, a particular wig style might indicate you were a scribe of a certain level, a vizier, or a governor of a province. These official wigs were often highly conventionalized in art, appearing somewhat stiff but always perfectly ordered, reflecting the Egyptian ideal of Ma'at cosmic order and justice that underpinned the administration. And then, there was the significance of wigs in funerary practices and afterlife beliefs. Ancient Egyptians invested immense resources and effort into preparing for the afterlife, believing that aspects of the person like the Ka and Bi would continue in a spiritual form, requiring sustenance and the ability to navigate the next world. Presenting the correct idealized appearance in the afterlife was crucial. People were frequently buried with their wigs, often placed directly on the mummy's head, or included in the tomb goods. Tomb walls and sarcophagi are filled with depictions of the deceased shown in their finest attire, invariably including their most elaborate wigs. The wig in this context was seen as necessary for the deceased to be complete and presentable in the next world, allowing them to maintain their identity and status as they had in life. It was part of the process of becoming Ak, a blessed, effective spirit in the afterlife. Imagine preparing someone not just with food and tools for eternity, but with their best wig, perfectly styled, ready to greet the gods and ancestors. The wig in funerary belief also held possible symbolic meaning related to transformation or rebirth. Just as the snake sheds its skin as a symbol of renewal, perhaps the removal of natural hair and the donning of a wig symbolized a form of purification or transformation necessary for the transition to the afterlife. The perfectly formed, unchanging nature of the wig in art might also reflect the Egyptian desire for eternal stability and order in the next world. The importance of wigs thus extended from the most mundane practical concern hygiene, protection from sun, to the most significant social signal status at a party, and, ultimately, to the most sacred and eternal realm of afterlife belief. They were truly woven into the fabric of Egyptian life and death. A quirky tidbit about wigs in the afterlife involves specific depictions in funerary art. While the deceased are often shown with perfect, elaborate wigs, some tomb paintings also show servants carrying or preparing wigs for the deceased in the afterlife, implying that even the maintenance of your wig was expected to continue in the next world. Imagine having spectral servants following you through the duat, the underworld, just to keep your hairpiece looking pristine for eternity. There's joke number one. Made it to the afterlife, just gotta wait for my wig dresser servant to catch up. Hope he packed the good beeswax. Ancient Egyptian wigs held significant importance beyond daily fashion and social gatherings, being essential components of regalia for priests and officials in religious ceremonies and official duties, and prominently featuring in funerary practices and beliefs about presenting an idealized appearance and maintaining status in the afterlife. This is our mainstream historical fact, covering the non-social roles. Historians debate the primary symbolism of wigs in ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs. Were they purely about maintaining the individual's elite status and appearance as they were in life, ensuring they were recognizable and respected in the next world? Or did the act of wearing a wig, or the wig itself, hold deeper symbolic meaning related to spiritual transformation, purification, or the process of becoming a divine-like being occurring in the afterlife? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, exploring the potential layers of meaning beyond just eternal fashion. Looking at the solemn depictions in tombs, seeing the deceased with their elaborate wigs, you understand that these hairpieces were more than just accessories. They were part of identity, status, and preparedness, even for the next world. Joke number 2. You see a statue with a magnificent wig. That's a wig ready for eternity, and possibly a very windy afterlife. They were a constant symbol of who you were and your place in the cosmos. Joke number 3. You imagine checking your will. Make sure I'm buried with my best wig, the one with the extra gold strands, you know, for status in the underworld. You've seen the multifaceted importance of wigs in ancient Egypt, extending from hygiene to high ceremony and even the afterlife. But let's circle back to the party, that vibrant gathering of the elite with their elaborate hairpieces, and consider a lighter, but potentially awkward, side the possible wig-related party problems and etiquette mishaps that might have occurred. While everyone aimed for a perfect presentation and adherence to unspoken rules, put a bunch of people in a room or garden in a hot climate, wearing elaborate, sometimes heavy, hairpieces, perhaps enjoying liberal amounts of wine and food, and social mishaps are bound to happen. Wigs, despite being carefully affixed, weren't immune to the realities of a lively gathering. Imagine the possibilities for wig-related faux pas. The most obvious might be a wig becoming dislodged, perhaps during enthusiastic dancing, a vigorous gesture, or simply bumping into someone in a crowded space. A wig might shift, tilt, or even, in a truly catastrophic scenario, come completely off. For a society where the wig was so central to status and appearance, a public wig slippage would likely be mortifying for the wearer. Sensory details the feeling of your wig suddenly tilting, the visual of someone else's wig askew, the quiet gasp from nearby guests. Then there's the issue of the melting perfumed cone. While the melting was intentional, the rate of melting might not always have been perfectly predictable. A particularly warm spot in the room, or vigorous dancing, could cause the cone to melt faster than anticipated, resulting in more profuse dripping of perfumed oil down the wig and clothing than was perhaps considered graceful. Imagine the look as someone's elaborate wig starts to look less perfectly styled and more like a greasy, heavily scented mess. Joke number 1. His wig is melting beautifully, a little too beautifully. Perhaps. Looks like he's just acquired a new, impromptu oil slick shoulder pad. Accidental contact was another risk. But despite the unspoken rule about not touching others' wigs, navigating a crowded party meant being in close proximity. A careless movement, a stumble, or reaching for something at the same time as someone else could lead to an accidental brush against someone's carefully styled and possibly delicate hairpiece. This would likely be followed by hurried apologies and awkward checks to see if the wig had been disturbed. Think about the weight of some of those elaborate wigs, especially the long, dense ones made of human hair. As the evening wore on and fatigue set in, even elite Egyptians got tired at parties, maintaining perfect posture to keep the wig sitting just right might become more challenging. You might see subtle signs of discomfort, a slight tilt of the head, a hand discreetly reaching up to the back of the neck, carefully avoiding the wig itself. Of course, the combination of wine and elaborate wigs could also lead to interesting situations. While depictions show wine being consumed, getting overly intoxicated while wearing a large, valuable wig and trying to adhere to strict etiquette seems like a recipe for potential disaster. Imagine someone in a drunken stupor attempting to adjust their wig or interact clumsily, threatening the carefully constructed appearances around them. Joke number 2. Don't worry, my wig's perfectly straight. It's the rest of the room that's tilting. Minor styling mishaps could also become noticeable as the evening progressed. A carefully set curl might loosen, a braid might become slightly undone, a decorative pin could fall out. While not as catastrophic as a full wig slip, these imperfections would detract from the polished look and might be a source of minor embarrassment or require a discreet trip to a private area for a quick repair if possible. Our quirky tidbit about party problems involves the potential for unexpected reactions to the perfumed cones or the wigs themselves. While perfumes were popular, some individuals might have sensitivities or simply dislike certain strong scents. Imagine trying to politely engage in conversation with someone whose melting cone is releasing a particularly overwhelming or unpleasant fragrance right next to you. Or perhaps, despite the emphasis on hygiene, someone's wig wasn't as clean as it should have been, leading to subtle social distancing, difficult in a crowded room. There's joke number 3. His wig smells strongly of mothballs and questionable decisions. Must be a very old, very important wig. While depictions of ancient Egyptian elite parties emphasize elegance and order, the practicalities of wearing elaborate wigs and melting perfumed cones in a social setting likely presented opportunities for accidental mishaps, like dislodged wigs or excessive dripping, and required adherence to unspoken etiquette rules like avoiding touching wigs to prevent social faux pas. This is our mainstream historical fact, acknowledging the potential for problems amidst the elegance. Historians debate how frequently actual wig-related party problems occurred and how severely social faux pas involving hairpieces or melting cones were judged by the elite. Were these incidents rare due to the careful preparation and etiquette? Or were minor mishaps relatively common, perhaps leading to quiet gossip or social judgment rather than outright scandal? How much tolerance was there for minor imperfections or accidents involving appearance at these gatherings? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the reality versus the ideal of wig presentation at parties. Navigating an ancient Egyptian party wasn't just about making conversation, it was about navigating a space filled with elaborate, sometimes precarious, hairpieces, being mindful of your own and everyone else's, and hoping you didn't become the subject of quiet whispers due to a wig-related incident. Modern aside, it was like attending a fancy event today where everyone's elaborate hairstyle is somehow held on with sticky tape and could fall off if you move too fast. These potential party problems highlight the peculiar realities beneath the polished surface of ancient Egyptian elite social life, adding a touch of relatable human, or at least human with a wig awkwardness to the historical record. We've explored the peculiar etiquette of ancient Egyptian wig parties, from preparing your elaborate hairpiece, navigating unspoken rules, and dealing with melting cones, to coping with the heat and even facing potential wig mishaps. We've seen what these wigs were made of, how their size and style signaled status, and their importance not just in social life but also in ceremony and the afterlife. But what does this whole fascinating world of wigs, this focus on elaborate hairpieces, really tell us about ancient Egyptian society as a whole, particularly its elite? The importance of wigs in ancient Egypt reveals a society with a strong emphasis on appearance, status, and order. While practical reasons like hygiene and sun protection were certainly factors, especially given the climate and lack of modern sanitation, the sheer expense, elaboration, and prominence of party and formal wigs point to social signaling being a primary driver. Wigs were not just functional coverings, they were meticulously crafted accessories designed to communicate wealth, social rank, and importance at a glance. This strong emphasis on visual status display reflects the hierarchical nature of ancient Egyptian society, where social position was clearly defined and publicly acknowledged. Your wig was part of your uniform, a visual shorthand telling others where you fit into the complex social structure. The distinction between the large, elaborate wigs of the elite and the simpler or absent hair coverings of commoners was a clear visual marker of class difference. The widespread importance of wigs among the ancient Egyptian elite, serving as crucial indicators and elaborate visual displays of status, wealth, and social hierarchy, reflects the society's strong emphasis on appearance. Order, mayat? adherence to social norms and etiquette, and the clear visual differentiation between social classes. This is our mainstream historical fact, summarizing what wigs reveal about the society: the elaborate preparation rituals, the bathing, oiling, makeup, dressing, and careful wig affixing, often with servants, they underscore the amount of time, resources, and effort the elite dedicated to presenting a polished, perfect exterior for social interaction. Appearance was clearly not superficial. It was deeply integrated into social performance and self-identity. There's also a connection to the ancient Egyptian concept of Ma'at, which embodies cosmic order, truth, justice, and balance. Egyptians strove for Ma'at in all aspects of life, presenting a clean, orderly, perfectly composed appearance, symbolized by the meticulously styled wig contrasting with potentially messy natural hair, might have been seen as reflecting an inner adherence to Ma'at, a personal contribution to order in the world. Wigs could be seen as part of visual Ma'at, an outward manifestation of inner or societal harmony and control. While the focus on wigs, melting cones, and elaborate grooming might seem peculiar or even a little strange to our modern sensibilities, within the context of ancient Egyptian culture and beliefs about appearance, health, status, and the afterlife, it was a logical, functional, and deeply meaningful system. It highlights how different cultures place different values on things, and how seemingly minor aspects of daily life, like what you wear on your head, can hold profound historical and social meaning. Modern aside, it makes you think about the strange fashion trends or status symbols in our own time that people in the future might find utterly peculiar. The meticulous care of wigs, their role in religious ceremonies and official duties, and their planned inclusion in tomb goods for the afterlife all reinforce that these were not mere fashion accessories. They were symbolic objects woven into the most important aspects of life and eternity, representing identity, preparedness, and status across different realms of existence. A quirky tidbit that perhaps encapsulates the peculiar importance of wigs is their enduring presence in Egyptian art. For thousands of years, through shifting styles and dynasties, the depiction of people, especially the elite, wearing elaborate wigs remained remarkably consistent. This artistic convention wasn't just about showing hairstyles, it was about depicting people in their ideal, formal, and recognizable state, a state achieved and maintained through the wearing and care of wigs. Imagine an artistic tradition so focused on wigs that it persists for 3 millennia. There's joke number one. Egyptian art history mostly consists of trying to date a tomb based on the specific curl pattern of the deceased's wig. Historians debate the exact relationship between maintaining outward appearance, like meticulously styled wigs and fine attire, and the Egyptian concept of inner virtue or status ma'at. Were presenting a perfect exterior and adhering to strict appearance norms seen as merely status symbols in social performance? Or were they genuinely believed to reflect or contribute to an individual's inner adherence to cosmic order, cleanliness, and balance ma'at, making outward appearance a form of expressing inner virtue? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, exploring the deeper philosophical link behind the presentation. The importance of wigs in ancient Egyptian elite society provides a fascinating lens through which to view their values, social structure, and daily lives. It shows how seriously they took personal presentation and how deeply status was embedded in visual communication. Joke number two. You look at depictions of different wig styles. So much history, told through hair or gluable fibers. It reveals a culture where hygiene, beauty, status, and even readiness for the afterlife were all interconnected, symbolized by a carefully chosen hairpiece. Joke number three. You imagine a time traveler arriving in ancient Egypt. Okay, first thing, I need to shave my head and get a really big wig. Otherwise, I'll never fit in. And now, as our journey through the peculiar world of ancient Egyptian wig parties and the multifaceted significance of wigs comes to a close, you can let the images of elaborate hairpieces and melting cones begin to fade. The sounds of ancient banquets are quieting. The smells of perfume and dust are softening. You can let go of the etiquette, the status symbols, the secrets held within the styling, all the history, the details. The peculiar customs are settling down for the night. They are safe now, understood. A fascinating glimpse into a different time and place. Peace, quiet. The ancient world is still. The wigs are resting on their stands, breathing easy, letting go, drifting. Sweet dreams.